Welcome to our webinar today. I'm Merv Wyeth and I'm with Nigel Smith. We're both members of PMI UK's digital events team, and Nigel's a very active member of the team, and today he's going to present, but he does other behind the scenes stuff, and I'll introduce him properly in a minute. So you can see on your screen here a number of things. You'll also see the welcome message that we've provided, with a fair bit of instructions so you can actually get the most out of this session. As usual, the session is going to be highly interactive. We're going to use Mentimeter, and we want you to go to Menti on typically on your phone would probably be the best way of doing it, and enter that code 794739. We're going to give you the PDU code at the end, and just to keep you here with us, and we're going to record the webinar, and the Mentimeter results will all be available to you on our website. So a little bit about the process here, the disk indicator. What we want you to do here is to open the Excel file and fill in the questions on tab 2. I'm sure Nigel will tell you a little bit more about that as we go through. So Nigel, if you could perhaps go to the next slide, and we're just going to get Mentimeter underway. So as again, a reminder, 794739 using menti.com, or you can point your phone at the QR code there, and that will enable you to get to straight where you need to address the first question. So if we move on to that question, and this is one we typically ask you. Let's just take a quick look at the number of people on the call. So we've got over 80 people on the call. We really want to see somewhere close to that number today within Menti, so you'll get the full experience and learn the most. We can see lots of people from all around the UK, but I can see India on there. I do wonder if Priya has joined us today. Hello, Priya, one of our previous speakers, if that's you from India, but I think we've got other fans around the country. There's Durham, that's going to be Hugo. Welcome, Durham. Welcome, Hugo. And I was looking for Rochelle over there in Florida, who's one of our people typically on here, but I can't see that yet. But Nigel, you can see a really good spread of people that have joined our session today. So thanks everyone for logging in. Okay, we take.
I think you've got our friends and colleagues from Italy as well, Merv, on the line.
Yes, absolutely. Having the joint event with South Italy chapter. Welcome, USA as well there. So really good. What you'll also see on there, you can actually enter your comments. So kind of a woohoo or amazing, or send in your comments as we go through, a bit sort of Facebook Live, but that's something we also got on there. So perhaps if we step on to the next question. And Nigel, I know we varied this slightly from what we did before. Do you want to just kind of talk to the rationale on that?
Yeah, so what I did on this one, Merv, was really just split up the roles that I've experienced in my career, predominantly on IT projects. And I'll come back to the variations of this on the disk profile as we go through, because I'm looking for a pattern where I expect to see certain roles fit within the disk profile, and I'll see if that bears any truth as we go through what I've shared this morning or this afternoon.
No, looks really interesting. The director delivery specialist split is quite typical. I see that we've got quite a lot of business consultants and analysts on there as well. So it's going to be quite interesting, I think, to segment that data.
Yeah, I was hoping for a few more sales guys.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
Everyone works in sales. Everyone works in sales.
Yeah. Okay. And over 70 people on here, which is absolutely brilliant. And now upward of 100 people on the call. Send in your comments as well. So we go to the next slide, Nigel. And this is where we introduce Nigel. You can see a little bit about him there. The Agility Coach for Project Professionals is an overall title. You'd also seen a little bit in the narrative about Nigel. That's the bit I'm going to remind you of. Nigel has extensive experience or background in IT project management, predominantly in the automotive and aeronautical space, but with a mixture of retail and fashion and healthcare thrown in. This has all been primarily with ERP projects. I had to look that up, enterprise resource planning. So, and he brings together a number of different approaches. So predictive, agile and hybrid. And predictive, I think, I guess we're using the traditional, what I knew as a waterfall approach. So he brings these together. Nigel does a lot within PMI UK. He joined in 2014. He's the regional vice chair for the Midlands branch. He's a member of PMI mentoring program and also a valued member of our digital events team. So with that, Nigel, if I hand on to you and you take us through for the rest of the hour. Thank you.
Thank you, Merv, and welcome everyone today. And thank you for taking time out to join me for this whirlwind tour of all things DISC. As Merv mentioned at the start, if you haven't had the chance to do so, in the handouts tab of GoToWebinar, you will find an Excel spreadsheet to download. There's 9 quick questions on tab 2, and you'll be able to get your results. And I'm just looking for the highest graph point on tab 3. Now, what I will do as I go through the introduction, I'll give you time for those that haven't managed to do it to have a chance to do that. The result you get from that will be most valuable to what we learn about ourselves and other people during the course of this webinar. But first and foremost, I'd just like to set out my stall of what I'm going to share with you over the next 50 to 55 minutes. I'll give you a little bit more of an introduction to myself, get to know myself, so you get to know me a little bit better. I'll do some general other housekeeping rules. We'll go through and identify together through Menti what your high-level primary DISC style is. I'll go through a bit of history lesson to where it all came from, and it's got a few surprises in there. And then we'll go into a more deeper dive, first at summary level, then a deeper dive into each of the 4 styles of DISC. We finish, as we usually do with these webinars, with a nice reflective practice question at the end about what you're going to do and how you can improve moving forward. And for PMI members, I will be releasing the PDU code at the end. And that will also be made available on the follow-up email, which will come out probably tomorrow with the recordings to the links and the slides. And as Merv's mentioned already, we want to make this highly interactive as possible today. So we are going to have an online quiz. It's certainly the first time I've done this. Not sure I've seen it in PMI before, but actually there will be winners. So please do log on to Menti. Now, just a little bit more about myself. So I live in a small village in northeast Worcestershire called Burcott. And actually it's a quite unremarkable place in the whole annals of history, apart from one event in 1605. On November the 6th, that day, the failed gunpowder plot conspirators, after raiding supplies and taking munitions from nearby Warwick Castle, actually came down past Cowton Court, which is now National Trust property, just down in Ulster, a few miles away. And those conspirators would have taken a track to a place called Holbeach House in Stourbridge. And they would have actually come past my house had it been there. Now, they also coined the famous term, failed to keep their powder dry, because with all this munitions they took up to Holbeach House, they actually blew themselves up there as well. So a failure all round. Secondly, I've just finished reading this really great book by Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. And in it, it contains the power of choice and attitude. This guy had all of his liberties, the clothes off his back, and all of his family members taken away from him. But the one thing they couldn't take away was his power of choice in really difficult circumstances. A recommended read. And finally, I'm quite privileged to say that I have the joy to drive a classic Mini, one of the seminal cars that's come out in the last 60 years. And for those of you today that actually drive a modern front-wheel drive transverse engine car, please thank the Mini. Just a little bit more about session housekeeping. Again, just a reminder there of Menti 794739. You'll get a lot from this webinar today, and you'll be able to participate, of course, in the quiz. You've already met Menti Ninja Merv, who's only going to keep me honest on time, and also Marshall questions, which you can enter into the question box on GoToWebinar. Now, if I'm not able to answer all of your questions at the end of the session, I will take them offline, and they will be posted on the PMI UK website at the end. So, first question really, and for me this is the golden rule about how I was raised and brought up. And it's all about treating others how you want to be treated. And what I'd just like to ask you is that something that you guys actually agree with? So the first question on Menti, treat others how you want to be treated, is that something that you agree with? And it's just a straight yes or no answer. Famous Perito coming out there, 82% saying yes, you do agree, and 17%, well, 16% now. Okay, I'll leave that running for just a moment, but it looks like it's averaging out. And what I'm going to tell you now is that actually I'm going with the minority here, and I'm actually going to say don't treat others how you would like to be treated. In fact, treat others how they want to be treated. And that's the key message that I really want to leave you with today. By understanding others and what makes them tick, and indeed what makes you tick, is absolutely vital and crucial to getting the best out of you, others, and your projects. After all, it is people that deliver projects. On to DISC then. Why do we need to know what styles and preferences of others are? Well, fundamentally, none of us walk around with labels on. We do need something to help us understand why people act, react, and respond in certain ways, many of which are in the opposite ways to what you may do. And once you start to understand this, you soon come to realise that in most cases, people are predictably different. And of course, you can use this to build, maintain, and enjoy better working relationships moving forward. Now, the takeaways that I trust you'll leave with at the end of this session are about self-awareness, awareness of others, and also modifying your own approach to suit. And I want you to leave here today being a true communication chameleon. And I'll offer up a few tips of things to look out for and how to flex your style. So here we go then. So if you successfully completed your short profile on the Excel spreadsheet, you'll have a graph looking roughly like this. It doesn't matter where all of the columns are. What you're really interested in is the high level, the highest marker one. And for those of you that may not have had the opportunity to have completed this, then I'm just going to basically ask you two questions before we get to the Menti question. So first question, generally speaking, most of the time, and in a work context, if you consider yourself to be more outgoing or more of a reserved person. So first question about, are you outgoing, more extrovert, or reserved or introvert? And the second question I want to ask, again from a general point of view, in a work setting, are you more focused on people or focused on tasks? And from those two questions, if, for example, you said, I'm outgoing and task, that makes you a D. Outgoing and people, an I. S is reserved plus people, and clearly, I guess you can work out C from that. So next Menti question, please. Could you please enter in your DISC high-level primary identifier? Glad we got some D's on the board. I was getting a little bit worried there. Interesting results. So I'd typically expect to see project directors and sponsors in the D column, a lot of project delivery specialists probably in the D and the I setting. I know there weren't many salespeople, but they probably would have been in the I category. So that's a pretty good spread from a sample of about 78 people. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. Just going to move on now and just go into the high-level styles of each of these. In fact, I'm not. What I'm going to do is just give you a brief history lesson, which is what I promised at the start. So, in the world of modern behavioural science, psychologist Dr. William Marston is credited with DISC as way back as 1928. And he also invented the early prototypes of what would become to be known as the polygraph or the lie detector test. And probably most interestingly about Marston, during his lifetime, he was convinced that women were far more honest and far more reliable than men, and he could work faster and more accurately. And as such, he championed the causes of women during the day. And he's also credited with creating the DC Comics superhero Wonder Woman. So a bit of a turn up for the books there. Now, before I carry on, I do probably need to issue a little bit of a health warning about what we're doing today, because it's important for me to say that what we're doing is not a test. There are no right or wrong answers. It's just you. And for the purpose of this high-level dive today, I'm going to talk more at the extreme ends of the styles in order to highlight some things that you may notice in yourself and in others, so that I can more readily bring them to life for you. So what I'm really offering is a tantalising taste to whet your appetite. This stuff typically takes days to go through. We've got about 45 minutes now. So let's talk through the high-level styles. So the Ds, the commanders, just do it. And because they're very task-focused and outgoing, they prefer to cut to the chase, get to the point, and move at a really fast pace. You've got the cheerleaders, the Is. Because they're outgoing and people-focused, they can get easily distracted and are often overly optimistic. And in relationships, the task elements can fall by the wayside at the expense of just having fun. And the carers, now the S's here, the reserved people persons, these guys do not necessarily feel the need to be the centre of attention, and often they seek the support of others to provide stability. In relationships, they may not say what's on their mind, which may in fact be frustrating for the more outgoing types, Ds and Is. And they will try hard to avoid conflict and seek win-win situations where they can step up, but if they feel vulnerable or threatened, they actually become a little passive aggressive. And what you have to recognise here is, do not mistake kindness for weakness with S-types. And then we have the critical thinkers, the Cs. And because these people are reserved and task-focused, they can sometimes come across as a little bit aloof or clinical where people are concerned. They like to reflect, consider what they're going to say. They make every effort to ensure what they say is correct with any of the statements that they make. And also, they can become frustrated with others if they do not match their expectations. And others can be frustrated with them if they are overly critical and picky. They can, of course, become your project documentation grammarians and spell checkers. So in summary then, the Ds and the Is are all fast-paced. They're more extrovert. Cs and S's, much more reflective, much more detail-orientated. Ds and Cs, they're all about the harder aspects, getting the job done. Is and the S's, they're all about the softer aspects within projects. So I'm going to wind up Menti again, and we're going to go now for competition time. So when I flick the next screen, you'll get an opportunity to put your name in to enter the competition. If you don't do it in the requisite time, you will be given an alias. So please take a note of the alias, because this is a competition that's worth winning. There's going to be 3 prizes at the end, which I'll tell you about later. But first and foremost, let's get started. Okay, so 75 are shown. Okay, so just give it a couple of seconds to wait for a few more people to jump in on this. And this first question, I'll start off quite easy. It's all going to be about William Marston, the guy we've just heard about. So I'm just going to start the quiz now. So which of the following are all true about William Marston? 10 seconds to go. Hey, yes, okay, well, yeah, vast majority have got that right. Excellent. I'm not sure what a fib fabricator was, but 9 of you opted for that one. And at this stage, I think I might just have the leaderboard here, see where everybody's going. Okay, so it's pretty close at the moment. That will change over time. And what you'll notice is the quicker you answer the question correctly, the more points you actually get. So well done, Mark B, on that one. More questions coming later. So let's dive into a little bit more detail about the D's then. Outgoing and task focus. So D's are all about drive, they're all about delegation, they're decisive, they're demanding, they are doers and disruptors, incredibly competitive. They're into headlines, not storylines. You have to come to them with a solution, not a problem. Does any of this sound familiar? Now, deep breaths, D's, for those D's of you out there, as you might not like this now. And I know what you're thinking. It's D for Donald, right? And very often D's are characterized by the ready, fire, aim, you know, ask questions later. Now, other real world examples include Margaret Thatcher, Sylvester Stallone, Robert De Niro, Tom Cruise, alpha people that know exactly what they want and are uncompromising in terms of how they achieve it. Now, of course, they're also change agents, but they can also be secret agents. That's more like it, right? The name's Bond, James Bond. And I can now sense that the assembled D's are probably feeling a little bit more snug now. So what is it that makes Bond a D? Well, of course, he's impetuous, he's courageous, not easily discouraged. He excels in emergencies, a rash decision maker. Work is all-consuming, and he's unlikely to apologise for any of his actions. So just to move on to what is a fuel of a D, what gets them going? Well, it's really all about competition and results. They're motivated by power and authority. But with that drive also comes some fears. And for a D, one of the biggest fears is fear of failure. Second to which is being taken advantage of. So when you work with Ds, be sure to know that they're shooting towards a target, and failure is not an option for them. So that's why they come across as being uncompromising, and certainly they don't like to be crossed. Okay, so 2 big things in the extreme Ds. And their method of control is pretty much, as you'll see from the 2 examples there, their force of character. Now, they are actually change agents within the organisation. But underlying all of that, what is their value to the organisation? Well, fundamentally, it's on the bottom line, which, to be frank, in projects, there's no denying that you actually need that. So, and it's their courage and conviction to get things done. So I'm just going to move on now to the second of our quiz questions. So is it offending others? Is it failure? Is it being ignored? Is it being taken advantage of? Excellent. Well, actually, there's two correct answers in there. A bit like the PMP exam questions for those that have done it. Some answers are more correct than others, but I took both into consideration for today. So excellent. Well done. So now let's talk about the eyes then. Eyes. Well, frankly, it's all about you guys, and don't we all know it? The glass is always half full, and for the most part, they have a cheery and positive disposition. They're always smiling. Now, eyes are impulsive, they're inspirational, they're highly interactive and interesting. They can also be impressionable and imaginative, but on occasion can also be irksome and irritating. And eyes, because they're very outgoing and people-focused, they get all of their energy from people, not from the task. And other common characteristics, they can be very playful, but they can get easily distracted, a bit like magpies picking up shiny objects and moving on, then picking up something else. Meaning typically they may procrastinate a lot, and changing their mind is actually commonplace. They'll start loads of things and probably finish none. So does that sound familiar? I guess the eyes out there, you know who you are, yeah? So here's a great example from the real world. Will Smith, the actor. Now you could of course have the UK talk show host, Graham Norton. You know, very often when Graham's doing his programmes, it's more about him than it is his guests. And often, as you'll see within Graham himself, high eyes can be drama queens. But how about this guy instead? Austin Powers, international man of mystery. Clearly very positive and optimistic, charming, but undisciplined. Now, again, what's the fuel for an eye? Well, these guys really like to be liked. So praise and recognition is the order of the day. And the more public it is, the better. And of course, their greatest fear is going to be rejection or loss of that popularity. Look at popular figures in the world of celebrity when they fall from their podium or from their crown. Rejection is very hard to take for those guys. What's their method of control? Well, actually, eyes are the great persuaders within an organisation. The great people person, get a lot of people on board, the we can do it mentality. And their greatest value to an organisation is actually getting all those people on board and you know, telling that really great story about the fact that we can do this thing together. The D's will say what needs to happen. The I's are the people that are going to get people on board. So I'm just going to move on now to the next of our quiz questions. Five seconds to go. Okay, being impulsive is the correct answer. There are some answers in there which are slightly correct, but being impulsive is most definitely the correct answer there. Lack of concerns for others, they're actually a very, very people person. And the reason I'm not overcritical is that very often they're away from the detail, they're up with the big picture brigade. So for them, it's more about being distracted and being interested in different things which are going on. But thank you everyone for taking part in that. Now to move on to the S's. Now the S's are the more reserved, people-orientated individuals, and as such, their pace of life is much, much slower. So here's an example, Princess Diana. It's all about safety, it's all about security. Other famous people here could be Nelson Mandela, Mother Teresa, Gandhi, even David Beckham. They're all about harmony. They're supportive, loyal team players. Slow and steady is the order of the day, and they will avoid conflicts and remain balanced. How about Marge Simpson? Now, S's are very sensitive and, as I said, slow and patient. And out of all of the 4 styles, they're actually the best listeners. And on occasion, they can exhibit the tendency to be self-sacrificing. And as I mentioned before, under pressure, S's can also exhibit passive-aggressive tendencies. Now, not only will they shut down, but they are often more likely than I's to have a complete rant and meltdown with pent-up emotion. And whereas with an I, you can't normally get a word in, sometimes with an S, it's hard to get the words out. So for the other styles working with S's, you need to give them time and attention to allow them to express themselves. So again, the fuel for S's is all around harmony and security. And of course, their natural fears are the loss of all of those things. And the other big thing in there is about change. The S's are most likely to be the most difficult crowd in a project or an organisation that are going to accept change. They're not resistant to it, they just need more time to come to terms with it. So for example, if you've got furloughed staff who are in the S domain, don't tell them on a Friday afternoon that you're going to want them in the office on a Monday morning. That's too short notice. You need to give them plenty of time and a bit of consultation. They will actually resist, and as I mentioned before, some of those passive-aggressive tendencies will start to creep in if they feel they feel being threatened in some way. So their method of control is really about slowing down, but actually for an S, this makes them incredibly reliable, dependable, if not a little predictable. You know how they're going to behave, what they're going to do. So reliability factor is really quite high with this group. And their value to an organisation, well, if you've got a lot of S's in your team, your project is on its way to success. The S's will make sure the work gets done. They're the completer finishers of your team, and actually the diplomats. They're less likely to get over emotional about various things, being of a more reserved disposition, and a clear, as I say, a clear great asset to any project team. They will ensure that things are done. So I think now we're on to another quiz question, and not surprisingly, it's going to be about S's. So here we go. So an S style needs others who what? Concentrate on the task, weigh up the pros and cons, help prioritise work, or state unpopular decisions. What are we all thinking? Oh, interesting. Okay, so for S's, because they're more on the people side and not task focused, they will probably have an issue in terms of prioritising work. And because they're not very verbal or outspoken, they're not going to rock the boat by stating unpopular decisions. So I'd rather other people do that for them. Concentrate on the task, yes, but it's not the primary answer here. That's more into the C category that we're going to go on to next. S's typically like people to make decisions for them so they can get on and do the work they need to do. But let's see who's in the lead now. So that's where we were before. Okay, so faith, just tipping Mark B there. We got James in third place. Come on, James, I expect you to be doing a little bit better than this. Also got Marina in there, and Vinay, and Peanut Play, great name. Barefoot Contessa, is that named after the wine? I don't know. Excellent, so that's our top 10. Let's see how that changes after our next few questions. But first and foremost, let's delve into the world of the C's. Now, here the C's, it's reserved and task focused, and a lot like the S's, pace is really slowed down. Some of the issues you get between the extrovert D's and I's and the C's and S's is the pace element. The D's want everything done now, the C's want it done correctly, the D's want it done again. So you get those sort of tensions that can happen within a project. But for C's, it's all about accuracy. They're both your quality control and your quality assurance of your project. The S's will make sure the work is done. The C's will make sure it's done properly. Doing things right and being efficient is the order of the day. C's are cautious, competent, consistent, and compliant. And they'll often go by the book. Okay, and I'm sure we've all seen examples of this in our career and our work life. And very often, high C's can actually suffer from paralysis, from analysis, and get completely overwhelmed with the level of detail. But in truth, if you're in the C camp, there's some really great company here. Steve Jobs. You could also have Bill Gates, Stephen Hawking, even Einstein, even Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk. And how about this guy? Sherlock Holmes, talented, genius-prone, perfectionist. Psst, perfectionism doesn't exist. They're very organised, they're very detail-orientated and analytical. I once heard, I think I watched the Steve Jobs film a couple of years back where he was designing an actual computer called a cube. And in his own words, if you make a perfect cube and you look at it, it doesn't look like a cube. So he actually put chamfers down the one end so it visually looked correct. That level of attention to detail you would not get from D's, I's or S's. So what's their fuel? Well, as I've mentioned, it's all about accuracy and quality. And often with C's, because they can be a little standoffish and a little bit aloof, for them, often being right, they'll choose being right over being happy. So, you know, if you consider the I's, which are the other end of the spectrum, for them it's all about fun, adventure and being happy, and the detail is something that somebody else can sort of worry about. So what's their fuel? Sorry, what is their fears? Well, typically, as you can imagine, criticism is something that C's do not like. Typically, when somebody says something's not good enough or something's missing, they've overanalyzed everything to death, they've done their best job. If you're going to criticize a C, you better have the evidence to back it up. If you have the evidence, you'll have quite an objective conversation. Without it, you'll be seen as just sort of hurling rocks, bricks and stones. And again, when you talk about the D and the C conflicts on the task side of DISC, you know, the D's just want it right here, right now. And they'll often say things like, oh, I want this as soon as possible. Now, to a C will say, well, what's as soon as possible mean? You know, you need to be specific, you know. And so to a D, as soon as possible, maybe this afternoon, but to a C, it could be a week on Tuesday. And you need to get this balance right so you communicate in the right way so the right message is understood. And equally, when C's are communicating to D's, because C's like lots of detail, you shouldn't actually present lots of detail to D's because all they want are the headlines and the bullet points. So again, just something there just to sort of reflect on in terms of, you know, the style of communication needs to embody each of the 4 DISC styles. Just now I want to move on to their method of control. And as you can imagine, high C's at least they go by the book, it's all about rules, and they're very, very conscientious. And C's, as with S's, will prefer lots of written communication as opposed to verbal communication. And their value to the organisation, as I've mentioned before, the S's will make sure the work's done, the C's will make sure it's done right and correctly. So they are, as I mentioned before, your grammarians of your project documentation. If you want someone to find all your spelling mistakes, the C's are the guys to do it. And often they will tell you about it even without you asking. And certainly for I's and D's, that can be irritating because you're looking for the buy-in. You're not looking for someone necessarily to cross all the T's and dot all the I's all of the time. So I hope that's made sense. I think now we're going to head to another quiz question. This one's going to be about C's. So what does a C style prioritise? Is it support, challenge, accuracy, or action? Excellent, great. That is entirely the right result. So for C's, it's all about the detail. It's all about being correct. So thank you for your answers there. But of course, before I move on, it's fair to say that, you know, we don't walk around with labels which say D, I, S and C on. We're all a blend. And for those of you that did the short Excel exercise, you will notice actually all four of those columns would have been somewhere on the graph. And if you've got it above the midline, they're more of your dominant characteristics. So for example, you know, you could be a D with an element of S and I. And clearly with those four D, I, S and C, there's actually millions of combinations, and probably no two people are identical. And as we'll talk about in a short while, your disk profile changes under certain situations. So today we've looked at it from a work perspective, but I'll talk in a short while about how your disk profile can change under stress and when you're living in your home life. And then you can see more readily how you need to modify to manage your approach. So far to date, I've talked about the real extremes of each of the profiles. Now, of course, if you're a high D with a good dose of S, you'll be a bit more reflective, you'll think a little bit more, you'll have more detail focus and people focus, which will actually at times bring your D down. Now, of course, we mentioned with Ds in particular that they're great in emergencies. So if there's an emergency at work, an emergency in the project, or an emergency at home, you're going to more readily go to more of a high D situation. When things aren't necessarily on alert mode, your S's and your I's and your C's will come more into play. So with the metaphor here, it's not just a black coffee. Of course, you can add bits of milk and sugar to taste, and you become a different blend of each of those disc styles. Just at this point, just want to cover things to watch out for, because as with most things in life, polar opposites give us the biggest variation in behaviour. And I've given you some examples of, for example, the I's and the C's finding I's irritating and I's finding C's quite slow. So again, I's might view C's as being cold and calculating and condescending, whereas C's may see I's as impulsive and irritating. And, you know, even from my own perspective, when I'm listening to an I that just talks and talks and talks, I might just say to them, yeah, but what happened in the end? You know, just cut to the chase, get to the point. Because very often C's like to be very verbose with their colourful language and the rich descriptions to bring things to life to get people on board. And as I mentioned before, D's will often see S's as far too slow. They want stuff done. They're not worried about the people factor. They just want to get the hard task of the project done. And under those certain situations, the slow and steady S's will often see D's as being just too much, too demanding, and too domineering. And just a bit of a tip here for the C's and the S's, those that are a little bit more introverted than the D's and the I's. In real terms, you can afford to be a lot more blunter with D's and I's, because actually they're up in the big picture world, they're not into the detail. You can actually exert a little bit more assertiveness and force on them, and they'll just take it in their stride, because very often that's what they respect. Two high D's working together on the same aim for the same goal will often respect each other. But again, it's all about they don't fail and they don't get taken advantage of. And if one D takes advantage of another D, then of course it can be all-out war. And just some other things to sort of look out for a little bit. S is typically pre-COVID, if you were doing a Zoom meeting or a GoToWebinar or a Skype meeting or a Teams meeting, they would be the guys that if the meeting's at 2 o'clock, they would roll up at 2 o'clock, their camera would be switched off, they'd be on mute, and they would only speak when spoken to, as opposed to the I's and the D's that will show you the back of their houses, the garage, whatever's going on in their life. And so for S's, they will arrive late because actually they want to avoid all of the chatter at the start. They just want to get into the business of the meeting itself. So typically, how do you spot these traits? You know, if you were to walk into a room of people, you know, when we're allowed to do so under the new regulations, well, typically speaking, you know, within 2 to 3 minutes of entering a meeting room or an office full of people, you will spot the D's and the I's quite readily. They'll be the ones which are a little bit more animated, talking quite loudly or quite fast or quite authoritative. So they're the ones that you will see quite easily. C's and the S's are a little bit more difficult to distinguish. But as with most things, the way you can do this, of course, there's deeper profiling to do this, but of course, not everyone's going to take that forward. But the best thing to do is just be a little bit curious and just ask questions about, you know, what people believe in or what they're working on or how they're doing certain things. You'll start to pick up a few of the cues to how their styles and characteristics play out in their particular preferences. So now we have the penultimate quiz question coming up, and this question, it's all about me this time. So the question's going to be, having spent the last 50 minutes listening to me talk through all of these DISC profiles, what profile do you think is my primary one on DISC? And this will be a really interesting result for me, so please think carefully. Just another final 10 seconds to go. So do you think I'm authoritative and leading, or talkative and charming, or safe and secure, or calculating and complex? Really, really interesting result there. Yeah, I can tell you personally, when I came across the DISC profile about 2 years ago, I was quite an introverted person, I still am. But I set out one of my personal life goals to become more I. And the way I decided to do that was to reach out, to do webinars and presentations and basically engage a lot more with people. So thank you for people that recognise that I might be moving in that direction. But fundamentally, even if I was to take the test again today, I would still come out as a high C. And I hope that is a demonstration of, you know, this language of modifying to manage and becoming a communication chameleon to get the best out of others by treating them the way that they want to be treated. But just following on from this, I just want to now take a quick look at the leaderboard and see where we're at. Okay, so James is coming up into the runner-up place here. We've still got Faith in first place with the fastest response there. Peanut Place coming in, and a few have fallen down the order and probably out of the top 10, but we've got some pretty consistent performers there. We've still got Barefoot in just 1 foot off the podium at the moment. Will the last question make all of the difference? Well, let's find out, shall we? And this is the final question. And before you take a rash answer to what it is, this question's got absolutely nothing to do with disc. This is a handicap to take all of the disc players out of the equation. So good luck, everyone. So 5 frogs are sitting on a log. 4 decide to jump off. How many are left? How many are left? Okay. Well, the answer is actually 5. And the reason is, and it comes back to we will come back to our reflective question at the end, just because you decide to do something doesn't mean that you've done it. Action cures fear, action gets things done. Thinking about it and deciding is not enough. So well done to those of you that got that right. And now then, drum roll please, because we're going to go now to the final positions. And once we've got the final 3, I'll then let you know what the winners will receive. Peanut plate. Now, yes, well done, sir. Well done. I think you came in from 3rd or 4th there to win. So I'll need to know what your true name is, of course, and I'll just going to announce the prizes in just a second. But also, well done to Barefoot, Contessa, and Faith. I'm just going to write these down. So Faith going from 1st to 3rd on the podium just there. But well played, everyone, and thanks for taking part in this. I hope you found it interesting. And I just want to share with you now what the winners are actually going to receive. So first place for Peanut Play, I'm offering a full disc profile, and I'll talk about what that is in just a moment. But equally, I'm going to offer a free deep dive coaching experience for up to 2 hours, where I'm going to introduce you to the wonderful world of coaching, and we're going to work on towards one of your goals. So that's for Peanut Play. And just to talk about the full disc profile, so this afternoon, what we focused on is the public persona of your disc profile, your styles, your preferences, your characteristics, and your traits. Wouldn't it be really great to understand how you behave in a private situation or under pressure or stress, and also how you're perceived at home? The full disc profile will give you 3 graphs. And what you will notice is how you have to modify to manage your approach between a home situation and a work situation. And do you have to up your D at work than you would at home? What happens when you're under stress? Do you become more compliant? Do you become more people focused? Do you become more task focused? So wonderful insights into understanding yourself at a real deep level. So well done, Peanut Play. We'll go for that. We'll organise a session to go through that after this session. And the 2nd and 3rd place finishers will also receive an opportunity of a deep dive coaching experience, where again, I'm prepared to invest a couple of hours into work. Well, not just explaining what coaching is and how it works. I'll also give a breakdown of the mini disc profile that you've been through today, and also a full coaching experience. And this is a final question, I believe, on my part, and it's all about not necessarily what phone have you got, but what phone would you prefer? This is a bit of a fun question on my behalf, because I've got a theory about what styles prefer different types of phones. I'm just wondering, oh, we've got a BlackBerry coming in. I guess that would have to go into the Android category if you want to re-vote there. But yeah, it's not necessarily telling me what I want to hear, maybe. So my theory here is that typically the task-orientated people, the Ds and the Cs, would probably prefer Android. And we've got we've got C's, and we've got just a few D's, but actually we've got quite a lot of S's in the Android category. And the I's and the S's would probably be more Apple focused, because of course it's all about style, it's about them, it's something that's a bit, you know, easier and neater to see and look at. Interesting answers there. And I did have a follow-up question, which actually I took out of this particular question lineup, is that for those of you that have iPhones, how many of you have got cracked or broken screens? Because I would imagine that might be quite high as well. So thank you for answering that. And then just to recap on the styles then. So fundamentally, the D's, they're the just do it brigade. They decide the changes. The I's, the cheerleaders of the organisation. You can do it. The secret persuaders, they get everybody on board to achieve. They round everybody up to say, we can do this. The S's, they're all about getting the job done correctly and right. Sorry, the S's are the ones that will complete the work. They are your completer finishers of your project work. And the D's, the critical thinkers, the analysts, the librarians, are the ones that will police the whole thing to make sure things are done correctly. If you've got new rules and regulations that are being put out across your organisation, the C's are the ones to get on board in terms of making sure that happens, because they will go by the book, they will go by the process. I just wanted to launch into some of the key takeaways from this session. So, as I said at the start, the one thing I really wanted to do was raise your own self-awareness about what particular style you may be, or what preferences and characteristics that you exhibit, and understand them in a little bit more detail, but also recognise the style of other people around you, people that may be similar or wildly different, and also to then bring into play how you can have some tips, tools and strategies to modify, to manage your approach in terms of how you interact with these various people to get the best from you, best from them, for the best for your project. Okay, so it's all about, at the end of the day, getting the best result, and very often it's the soft elements that make the big impact in projects, from my own experience, I have to say. And I also just wanted to revisit this really. So I made a bold statement at the start of the session, which I think about 70% of people disagreed with, where I said treat others how they want to be treated, not how you want to be treated. And all I'd ask you to do is just reflect on that statement, because we are all different people. If we were all a bunch of D's or I's, the world would be a very dull place, as it would if we were all S's or C's. And actually having diversity in a project team is highly desirable, highly desirable. So I would encourage you to actually look at your team makeup and see where you can to get these different styles coming in. And just again to reflect and think about, you know, if you expect things the way you want them, how would that play out for everybody else? Perhaps it's a case of actually moving towards that other person. And if you do want to bring peace and harmony to your project life, then you may find that the language of DISC can really help. It's not about changing who you are, but moreover, it's about, as I keep saying, modifying to manage your relationships with those around you who may have different perspectives. Now, some of these modifications might be as simple as either speeding up or slowing down. Focus a bit more on fact or logic, or even feelings and fun. And this can in fact help you build a relationship bridge, and then you can choose to walk it. You can either choose to go all the way across, or at least meet people halfway. So I'd like to, I do apologise, I'm running a few minutes late here, but just wanted to do a reflective practice question here. What is it you're going to do? What are you going to stop? What are you going to start? What are you going to continue? What are you going to do differently? Now again, remember that quiz question we had about the frog. It's not about thinking what you're going to do, what action are you actually going to take? Okay. Platinum rule. Listen, adjust. Nurture my D. Be aware and also start behaving. Excellent. Keep them coming in. It's fair to say that we've got still over 100 people on this call. All of the input that's been put in through Mentimeter has been recorded, and this slide deck will actually be available as a slide share presentation. And indeed, this video will be loaded to Vimeo website with links from the PMI UK website, so that you can reference them thereafter. But keep those coming in, and just to move on to another question, what one word would you describe to you, sorry, what one word would you use to describe this session today? I'd just really like your feedback to understand my own performance in terms of what you thought of the session. Thank you. Keep those coming in on that page. Again, they will be recorded. I just want to flash forward now to say that if anybody wants any personal and complimentary feedback on their short profile, I'm happy to do so. Please contact me at nigel@nigelsmith.coach. My other contact details are there for phone number and my LinkedIn profile as well. If you're also interested in the full profile, please speak to me about that as well. Just want to spend a quick moment talking about upcoming events from PMI UK. We have tomorrow the UK AGM for members and non-members. All of these details are available on the UK events website. Next Wednesday, we've got Dancing with Disruptive Conflict by Paul Fox. Then the next two after that, the 23rd and the 29th, I'm pretty super excited about because I'm helping to produce and host those events. So I believe we've got Rochelle and Isla on the webinar today. They'll be talking about building global project teams in times of no travel. And then on the 29th, we have Marina talking about cultural pitfalls in international project management. And as I say, full details available at the PMI UK website. And thank you, PMI members, for your patience. Your PDU code is CO75 JEXILR. That's CO75 JEXILR. And again, I'll just leave you with my contact details. Apologies, I've sort of gone over the hour. I don't know, Merv, if many questions came in during that time.
Not a huge number, but there's one from Kevin, Fabio, and Maggie. So I know you'll pick up those questions a little bit later. And our winner, Peanut Play, was Petra. So we've got her contact details. I don't think we've yet heard from Barefoot Contessa or Faith, so do please let us know who you are, and we can then make sure that we get those prizes to you. So I think that's covered off that. You're quite right in terms of future speakers being on the call. I noticed that Marina's on there as well. So hopefully you can build this. This is certainly the best use of the Menti quiz that I've ever seen. So it's given me lots of great ideas, very high participation rate, Nigel. So absolutely fantastic.
So that was good. Excellent. And just to say, Merv, for those people that have asked questions, if they're happy to hang on the line for another 5 minutes, if it's okay to do so, I'm happy to take the questions, unless you need to bring the session to a close. So for those that are willing to back on.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So we'll do that potentially. I'll switch off the record.